Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michael Regina. I'm the author and illustrator of the all-ages horror graphic novel, The Sleepover, and I'm currently working on my follow-up book, currently titled Deepwater Creek, and if you're interested in learning more about that, I do regular production updates on my channel where you can learn a little bit more about what I'm working on, see me working on the artwork and this sort of thing. So check it out. In this video, I want to do a review of the tabletop role-playing game Vaesen, and the solo rules. Specifically, I want to do a focus on solo play using the supplement that recently came out called the Solo Thursday's Child, and talk a little bit about why I like this game and whether or not it's something you might enjoy. Big thank you to Free League for sending me a copy of the game to review, which I used in my How to Use Solo Role-Playing Games to write your own stories. So let's dive into talking about this game. So, a few things about Vaesen. What is Vaesen? Vaesen is, as it describes on the front cover, is a Nordic horror role-playing game, meaning that this game takes place in the Nordic area or in a mythical version of Scandinavia called the Mythic North. So this is a sort of turn of the century, 19th century, 20th century, whenever you want to sort of place it, but in and around that time period, set in a fictionalized version of Scandinavia, in which your characters play investigators who are given what is called the sight. They have the ability to see these strange and unusual creatures that tailor back to old folklore. And as an investigator, you have revived this thing called the society, and you are on a mission to sort of subdue these creatures or work with them, basically to deal with situations in which these creatures, driven out through the process of industrialization or driven out of their main areas or causing trouble because of this sort of thing, you are now sort of a mediating force between them and mankind, either to dispose of them, protect them, or to help them deal with a conflict that they've created with humanity. So it's this really sort of cool blending of mythology and sort of turn-of-the-century style play. Yeah, it's a really interesting setting, as well as I love the dynamicism of a game that is so focused on sort of bringing mythology to life. It's super cool. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I think makes it really interesting from a gameplay perspective in a moment. One of the things I'm discovering as I'm playing TTRPG games, I've played a number that are horror-based, meaning, something involving a monster or existential terror like Call of Cthulhu or Monster of the Week. I'm learning how to play Alien, playing Vaesen, and I feel like there's probably been another one or two that I've picked up and played to other degrees. But what really stands out to me about this game that makes it particularly interesting is the idea that the monster is not necessarily a bad guy. Like, that monster could be misunderstood. It may just be defending its own territory. And because of this, fighting these monsters is usually a terrible idea. So even in something like Monster of the Week, where direct confrontation is generally not a good idea because it's probably not going to go well for you, there is still sort of an understanding of I want to find the weakness of this monster, I want to use that weakness against the creature and then kill it, or find a way to banish it. Whereas this one, it could be more nuanced than that. The idea could be that there are people who are at fault, who are creating the conflict, and you just don't know about it yet because you haven't shown up and investigated. So the story element here gets a little bit more interesting because your characters are sort of playing conflicts from two fronts. Is it the monster's problem, or is it that the people involved could be the problem? And if you've been following along with my video on August Scythe, this is kind of a central theme for me in it, is that there's two conflicts happening. There's this idea that maybe there's a creature there attacking this plantation, this farm, but then there's also this sort of undercurrent of well, wait a minute, there's suspicion cast upon the people who work there, and this is largely due to the fact, too, I think within the game's rules, that not everybody can see these creatures. So who knows, but it's a really cool way to present a game. I'm enjoying that aspect of it quite a bit. Obviously, it goes without saying, but one of the things that makes Free League games so incredibly beautiful, I was looking at my shelf. I have a shelf behind me of different role-playing games that I've been picking up, and Free League, I have to say, has just become my favorite publisher of games. Their production quality is unparalleled across any game I've seen, and it's not just the artwork or anything like that. It's the entire presentation of the game, from the production of the books, the art involved, the writing, everything. It's just always beautiful, and it just kind of goes without saying. The art is all based off of artwork created by an illustrator named Johan Egerkrans. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But his art is fantastic. I actually became familiar with his art on a Lord of the Rings box set that I picked up a couple of years ago, and I was like, man, this art is really beautiful. So I purchased that box set for myself to replace the set that I had as a child. And then when I saw this, I was like, that looks like his artwork. And then I was not surprised, I guess, to see that it was his artwork. And from what I understand, it was based off of a art book that he created. Free League reached out and was like, we think this is awesome. How about we build a role-playing game around it? And well, it's a banger. I mean, from top to bottom, the art is just gorgeous throughout the book. There's such a feel with Free League games where I'm not only drawn in by the artwork, like I just keep it and I'll like look over the art. It feels like a coffee table book to share with other people, which is the highest compliment I know to give them from a production standpoint. It makes me want to use everything that is specific to the game. So like, I want the dice from the game. I want the screens from the game, like the GM screens, because it's all just so beautiful. I don't own the dice yet or the screen from the game because I have been only solo playing Vaesen, but it's all beautiful stuff. So from a production standpoint, I don't think you could choose better. And one of the things I really love about Free League's books is like the paper choice. It's so surprising because they use a matte finish for their paper, which as an illustrator who has books published, I really tend to like glossy paper because it really makes the colors pop. But whatever they're picking here, I mean, I don't feel like it hurts it at all. I mean, this is a spread from the book, and it looks gorgeous on the page. I can't say enough nice things about the production quality of this book, including the writing, which is very straightforward and understandable. I have found myself on a few occasions looking to just understand a rule set and sit down to read, and I'm only a few pages in, and like I've gotten the whole concept. I'm like, oh, okay, I get that now. I understand, how that piece interplays with another. It's beautifully written, and yeah, that's all I can really say about the presentation. It's all gorgeous. It's amazing. Worth the price of picking it up just so you can have a look at it. If you're like me and you love good art and well-written rules and all that stuff. And especially now with the solo play stuff, even if you can't find a group that's interested, there's zero reason you shouldn't be enjoying this game. It's fantastic. So a quick overview of the game. The game uses the Year Zero role-playing system that Free League has created. This system is very intuitive and I think really highlights narrative storytelling over maybe a more mechanical type focus that you might see in like a Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. I've tried a number of different role-playing games over the last year or two. I've definitely had more of an attitude of being excited about different types of systems and learning more about how these kinds of games get created. And I have to tell you, the Year Zero system may be my favorite role-playing game system. The reason being is that it's very simple to create characters, but then there's also great kind of character building questions that get built alongside. Basically, if you're not familiar with the Year Zero role-playing system, you build a dice pool. So rather than something like you would see in Dungeons & Dragons where you roll a d20 and then you kind of roll high and compare it against a target number set by the GM, or something like Powered by the Apocalypse where you just roll 2d6 and then you have variations of success. In the Year Zero systems, you create a dice pool of 6-sided die based on attributes that you have, and then additional dice get added based upon proficiency and skills. So like, for instance, the character August Scythe that I created for the solo game, August has a physique score of 3 in the attributes on the top, and then she has an agility score of 2. So what I would do in the terms of the game is, let's say I wanted August to create some sort of maneuver where she's trying to outmaneuver somebody or is trying to maybe be a little bit more acrobatic or something to that effect. I would use her physique score plus that agility score of 2, which gives me 5 6-sided dice. I roll those dice, and then if any of them turn up to be a 6, that counts as a success. And then you create variations of difficulty based on the number of success needed to accomplish something. In almost all cases, 1 success will do, but if it's a particularly challenging maneuver, maybe 2 6s are necessary, and so on. I particularly had a strong interest in learning to use these kinds of games with my children because I really enjoy storytelling with them. And one of the things that has gotten me so excited about role-playing games is I feel like I get to play with my kids again in a way that reminds me of what it was like when they were really little and we played with toys and all this sort of thing. We made up silly stories. We get to do it, but these games give us like great rules to do that off of. And what I've noticed is when I play in the Year Zero system with my children, we've been playing Tales from the Loop together, and what I'm noticing is that they really enjoy, one, the clarity of sort of success versus failure, and that idea of like grabbing, it's just something fun about grabbing big handfuls of dice and rolling dice and comparing your results and so on. And then in place of something like a hit point or something like that, you have conditions. And the way conditions might work is, let's say your character fails a roll in a particularly challenging situation, or let's say they roll that physique roll. My character was August was trying to do something acrobatic. I roll those five six-sided die, and I get no successes. I can choose to push the roll, which means that I re-roll all dice that were not a 6, and I take another shot at it. But if I do, I have to take a condition within the game. So like a physical condition might be exhausted, battered, wounded. And if you check off all of those different components and you arrive at broken, your character is sort of incapacitated and suffers some sort of injury or long-lasting effect, or potentially a insight, depending on how those dice rolls go. So what I love about this is there's an extreme amount of clarity on the part of the player of success versus failure. I don't necessarily set that. One of the things I've never really enjoyed much with D&D is there's a target number that feels a little bit arbitrary that I sort of based upon my own gut feelings about a situation. And I don't know, I just don't like that. And the more times when something is in the hands of my players and they know what they're doing and the success or failures are theirs to achieve is really helpful to me. And that sort of very clear system of when I take injuries, it also impacts my gameplay because each condition that you take actually affects the way your characters are hurt or the way they might roleplay those characters. So really love the Year Zero system. I've actually been working on developing my own role-playing game or my own setting, and I was starting to develop my own system, and I was going to largely use the Powered by the Apocalypse system, but I have to say the focus of the game I was building was a horror-focused game for young players, for children, and the Year Zero system has sort of taken over as my preferred system for that type of gameplay. And so really love the Year Zero system. Everyone at Free League, I think it's fantastic. I love how adaptable it is. It's great. One of the things I really like about it is that it plays with the idea of sanity or physical injuries in some really interesting ways. So in something like Call of Cthulhu, you might have a bout of madness in which you play out for so many rounds, either an affliction or something like that. This game has similar ideas in something like the fear mechanic within the game that may cause you as a character, the first time you encounter one of these Vaesen, to react in a certain way, and it gives you some certain rules there, which is great. But also as you take these sort of broken conditions, your character takes a permanent defect or potentially a permanent benefit based on the outcome of whatever happened within that game, within that moment of the story, I should say. It's a really interesting way of dealing with this that sort of opens up the storytelling in a lot of ways. I love this idea that a character changes and adapts to other things. I've seen this even kind of like the way the scars mechanic works in the new game Candela Obscura, but I really like the way they implement it here much more than what I saw there. But it's a cool mechanic regardless of which system you play it in. But it opens up it becomes a more interesting sort of narrative device to me between the two, or I should say it just does its own thing in an interesting way. Lastly, I want to talk about the supplement, The Solo Thursday's Child. I believe it's written by Per Holmstrom, who was actually kind enough to reach out to me on the solo play here. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, to say that you've been watching the videos. That was awesome. Thank you for hanging out and checking this out. But I was so glad that these rules came out because I was using the Mythic Game Master emulator that was what I was planning to do when I was making that series, but then to have like an official supplement come out, which I printed out here, was such a great and welcome addition, so that I could actually use what I thought was already a really well organized like mystery creation table section of this game, and then put some structure around it within this game to provide the bones of my own mystery. So in this, you're actually going to find a cheat sheet for creating your own mystery, as well as how to be able to tell if a yes or no type question, tables for creating variations within the story if you're not sure where to go, clues that you could find, randomized clues, words that you can use for inspiration, and Vaesen tables to help you sort of narrow down and determine what Vaesen might be the one that is at fault for a particular the mystery that you're involved in. It's super cool, really well written. One quick thing I actually got some clarification on from the rules, which is super helpful, is under the section for discovering a Vaesen, it says that once you have gathered some clues using investigation and try to link those clues to a Vaesen, you make a learning test. So a learning test would be you use the learning skill as well as the attribute up at the top to make a roll and determine successes with the number of 6s that you roll. And you try to piece those clues that you have to a Vaesen that might be the one that is at fault. And what's interesting here is that the rules say each success lets you roll for a clue on Vaesen's table 1, 2, or 3. So I was confused by this because the tables for the Vaesen do not actually have values that you roll against on. So I was like, I don't know how to use this, but my assumption was that you use the context within the story to then roll for the learning test, gain a success, then look at a Vaesen table to sort of select a Vaesen clue that aligns with the context of the mystery. I reached out to the writer, and that was what was confirmed to me, is that this is really that you get to pick or choose a clue from the Vaesen tables to help you out with your mystery, and you want to use the context that's happened up to that point to land on the correct clue. So just a quick clarification, this is a great supplement, well worth the purchase on DriveThruRPG. Print out a copy for yourself and have it. So let's talk about it in closing. In closing, I think Vaesen is a stinking masterpiece. I love this game. I'm really enjoying playing it from a solo play perspective. I'd love to sit down and play with some friends at some point, but if not, I mean, I've got my channel and I've got my character August, and I'm having a great time seeing what adventures she goes on. So I've said pretty much everything I know to say there. If you like horror games and you like the Year Zero engine, or if you've never tried it, in this idea of playing with folklore and sort of a more Sherlock Holmesian style approach where you're more or less action oriented and you're more investigative heavy, similar to something like Call of Cthulhu, but the horrors here are not unimaginable horrors like in Call of Cthulhu. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. Thank you again to Free League for sending me a copy of this. I can't wait to share more on the channel. If you are intrigued about this game and you want to watch me play it, like I said, I did run a series of videos talking about how I'm using solo role-playing games to write stories. You can check out a video here and go see how I'm using it in play. I plan to finish up at least the first mystery for August. And very shortly I'll have another video kind of outlining the next session of her adventure. Hope this was helpful in you deciding whether or not you want to try out Vaesen. I'll see you all next time.